The further back you look, the further ahead you can see. That was a quote by Winston Churchill. Where if you look far enough back, you realize we weren't the first to understand the depth of medicine. For over 300,000 years, the human species has defied the odds. From the scorching deserts to the frozen tundras, we are the only creatures who have shaped fire, tamed the land, and rewritten the rules of survival. Today, we stand as the planet's dominant force, but our journey wasn't always guaranteed. In fact, 99% of all species that have ever lived are now extinct. And yet, we endure not just because of strength, but because of an unbreakable will to push forward. When we think about Neanderthals, our closest cousins, we often picture relentless hunters, spearing mammoths and feasting on raw meat. But recent discoveries reveal something surprising. Their diet wasn't just about brute force. It was a science of survival, balanced with plants, seafood, and even other unexpected sources of nutrition. Forget the dumb caveman cliché. Neanderthals made tools, buried their dead, and even painted caves. They were really a clever species. Recent research on their teeth showed us that they were more developed than we thought. Turns out, self-medication isn't just human, it's older than humanity. Neanderthals likely knew which plants eased pain, fought infections, or soothed fevers. A species we once wrote off as primitive was actually a master at brewing nature's pharmacy. For years, scientists assumed Neanderthals were extreme carnivores. After all, their fossils are found near the remains of massive animals like bison and reindeer. Their bones even show high nitrogen levels, a signature of top predators. But new research is flipping that idea on its head. In 2018, researchers examined ancient dental plaque from Neanderthal remains in Belgium and Spain. The results were shocking. Neanderthals from colder regions did rely heavily on meat, but their Iberian relatives had a much more varied menu. Nuts, tubers, moss, and even mushrooms. That's right, they were prehistoric fungi lovers. And they didn't just eat plants, they cooked them. Burnt starches found in their teeth suggest they roasted roots and grains, making them easier to digest. Some even fermented their food, a technique humans would later perfect. In Portugal, researchers discovered seashells and fish bones near Neanderthal sites, with cut marks proving they weren't just scavenging, they were actively catching and eating marine life. They may have even harvested seaweed, rich in iodine and omega-3s, nutrients crucial for brain development. Could this mean Neanderthals were smarter than we thought because of a seafood-heavy diet? It's a theory gaining traction. Neanderthals had bigger brains than us, up to 10% larger, but brains are expensive to maintain, needing a steady supply of energy. So how did they fuel them? New evidence indicates they weren't just meat eaters, but rather strategic eaters. In colder climates, they relied on fat from animal marrow. In warmer areas, they boosted their carb intake with roots, berries, and even honey. Yes, honey. In some caves, scientists found traces of pollen from bee-attracting flowers near Neanderthal remains. Did they intentionally seek out this sweet energy source? If so, they were among the first consumers of nature's sugar. Far from being mindless hunters, Neanderthals may have mastered nutrition long before Homo sapiens. They adapted their diets to their environment, used fire to process food, and possibly even shared knowledge across generations. In 2017, researchers hit the jackpot while studying 50,000-year-old Neanderthal teeth from El Sidron cave. They scraped off fossilized plaque and found something wild: traces of penicillium mold. The same stuff Alexander Fleming turned into penicillin in 1928. What's even weirder is we found poplar bark. It's loaded with salicylic acid, the same painkiller we synthetically make as aspirin. Neither of these things are tasty or nutritious. Poplar bark is bitter and penicillium grows on rotting plants. So why eat them in the first place? Well, if you've got a raging toothache or infected wound, you'd chew anything that helps. Neanderthals might have stumbled onto these medicines by trial and error, or maybe they were straight-up ancient herbalists. Either way, it worked. Meet Shanidar 1. a Neanderthal dude who lived a rough life. His skeleton shows a crushed eye socket, a withered arm, and signs of lifelong injuries. Surprisingly, though, he survived into his 40s, which is so old for a Neanderthal. So how? His crew probably fed him, kept him clean, and treated his wounds. You won't live that long with disabilities and without serious community care. Then there's Shanidar IV, who was buried on a bed of yarrow and horsetail pollen. Both of these plants are medicinal. Yarrow stops bleeding, horsetail fights inflammation. Of course, skeptics say, maybe flowers just fell into the grave, but the pollen was clustered, like someone placed them there. Intentional, maybe. Either way, Neanderthals were clearly cozy with plants that just so happened to heal. Again at Kibara Cave, scientists found Neanderthal remains surrounded by traces of chamomile and yarrow. Chamomile is bitter, but it's a natural antiseptic and sleep aid. Yarrow is known as the soldier's woundwort, and of course it's for a reason. It clots blood fast. Modern herbalists still use both. Coincidence? Probably not. On top of that, Neanderthals at Kibara had rotten teeth. But guess what else they ate? It's mold with antibiotic properties. Could they have been self-medicating for dental infections? It's a stretch, but the dots start to connect. Here's where it gets cool. We're not the only animals who do medicine. Chimps swallow hairy, bitter leaves to purge gut parasites. Gorillas munch on specific clay to detox. Capuchin monkeys rub citrus juice on wounds, and the list goes on. So if primates can figure this out, why not Neanderthals? In fact, some of the plants Neanderthals ate, like yarrow and chamomile, are still used by indigenous groups today. The Huarani people of the Amazon, for example, treat infections with moldy leaves. It's almost like this knowledge is older than our species. But maybe Neanderthals just liked bitter flavors. Or maybe they ate moldy plants because food was scarce. Fair theory, but here's the thing. Many of these medicinal plants are low-calorie and not tasty. You wouldn't eat them unless you had to. Plus, the same plants pop up at multiple sites across Europe and the Middle East. Patterns aren't random. Still, scientists are cautious. Without a Neanderthal doctor's note, we can't prove they used these plants as medicine. But the evidence is stacking up. As one researcher joked, either Neanderthals were the world's first hipsters, obsessed with bitter foraged greens, or they knew exactly what they were doing. If Neanderthals were using natural antibiotics, it flips the script on human evolution. We used to think complex medicine began with Homo sapiens, but now it seems like our extinct cousins were brewing up aspirin tea and mold bandages way before we walked into Europe. It's not just about medicine, it's about empathy, healing the sick, caring for the injured. That's not primitive, that's deeply human. And Neanderthals were doing it first. So how do we know Neanderthals weren't just snacking on random weeds? It's not like we found a Stone Age prescription pad anyway. Scientists use some seriously clever tricks. It's like CSI Paleolithic Edition to piece this together. That crusty gunk on your teeth is called dental calculus, and it fossilizes over time. For scientists, it's like a time capsule of what Neanderthals ate, breathed, and chewed for medicine. They scrape off these ancient plaque samples, dissolve them in acid, and analyze the DNA and chemicals left behind. In El Cidrón Cave, this method revealed penicillin mold and poplar bark, stuff Neanderthals wouldn't eat for fun. It's like finding aspirin wrappers in a cave. You know they weren't just munching popcorn. At sites like Shanidar Cave, scientists sifted through layers of dirt and found pollen from yarrow, chamomile, and horsetail. But here's the interesting part. Pollen is tiny and fragile. Finding it clustered around bodies, that's not a random breeze blowing flowers into a grave. It's like Neanderthals left us again, a herbal first aid kit. Ethnopharmacology is a fancy word for let's compare ancient habits to modern medicine. Chimps swallow nasty leaves to purge parasites. Indigenous tribes use moldy plants as antiseptics. Neanderthals' plant choices line up with what traditional healers use today. Maybe medical knowledge got passed down through millions of years of trial and error. But could Neanderthals have eaten these plants by accident? Sure. Maybe they were desperate for food, or maybe moldy berries were just lying around. But here's the thing. Many medicinal plants are toxic if eaten in large doses. Neanderthals weren't idiots. They'd know which plants made them feel better and which ones killed their cousins. Plus, the same plants keep showing up at sites thousands of miles apart. If it were random, we'd see a chaotic mix of flora. Instead, it's yarrow here, chamomile there, poplar bark everywhere. It's clear that patterns do not lie. Science demands proof, and we'll never have a Neanderthal WebMD tutorial. But think of it like this. If you found ibuprofen in a time capsule, you'd assume people used it for pain. Same logic applies. The evidence is circumstantial, but it's piling up faster than dirty dishes in a college dorm. So, Neanderthals were human too. Their brains might have been wired differently, but they solved problems, cared for their sick, and maybe even brewed prehistoric tea. They weren't just survivors, they were pioneers, and we're just catching up to their genius. Okay, so Neanderthals were basically prehistoric herbalists. But did they stop at plants? Nope. These guys had a whole medical playbook. Neanderthals were obsessed with birch tar. They used it to glue stone tools to wooden handles, which is already impressive. Making tar requires heating birch bark to 350 degrees Celsius without oxygen. But here's the thing. Birch tar isn't just sticky. It's also antiseptic. Modern studies show it kills bacteria and fungi, making it perfect for treating wounds. Did Neanderthals figure this out? Maybe. They lived rough lives. Broken bones, smashed skulls, and injuries were common. Surprisingly enough, many of these injuries healed. Take the La Chapelle or Saint Neanderthal. This dude had severe arthritis, a broken rib, and a messed up hip. Yet he lived into his 40s. And let's not forget, Neanderthals lived in small, tight groups. Losing one member could mean disaster. Keeping everyone healthy wasn't just nice, it was essential. So, their medical knowledge wasn't just about plants or tar. It was about community. Cool story, right? But why should we care? Because this isn't just about ancient history. It's about us. Neanderthal medicine flips the script on human evolution, and even the future of antibiotics. When Homo sapiens rolled into Europe 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals had already been there for 200,000 years. They knew the land, the plants, and maybe even the medicine. It's highly possible that we learned from them. Some researchers think early humans picked up Neanderthal tricks, like using yarrow for wounds or birch tar for tools. After all, why reinvent the wheel? If it works, use it. This means some of our modern medicine might have roots in Neanderthal know-how. Moreover, we used to think caring for the sick was a Homo sapiens superpower. But Neanderthals did it too. After all, they healed wounds, fed the disabled, and maybe even buried their dead with medicinal plants. That's not just survival, it's compassion. This changes how we see human evolution. Empathy, innovation, and medical curiosity aren't unique to us. They're part of being human, and Neanderthals were human too. Also, studying Neanderthal medicine could help us fight superbugs. Antibiotic resistance is a huge problem, and we are scrambling to find new drugs. That's why we are looking at nature just like Neanderthals did. These plants have been used for millennia because they work. Modern researchers are now testing these ancient remedies to see if they can inspire new antibiotics. It's like a 50,000-year-old cheat sheet. Neanderthals may be gone, but their legacy lived not just in our DNA, but in the way we think, heal, and survive. Their world was harsh, yet they adapted with ingenuity, mastering medicine, diet, and technology in ways we are only beginning to understand. But here's the real question. What else have we overlooked? If we once dismissed Neanderthals as primitive, what other ancient knowledge have we buried under misconceptions? Perhaps history isn't just a story of progress, but of rediscovery. The past still holds secrets, and every fossil, every cave, every microscopic trace left behind is a clue. What we learn from them isn't just about who they were, it's about who we are, and what we might become. Because if a species we once underestimated could unlock the power of nature's medicine 50,000 years ago, Imagine what we're still capable of today. Thank you for watching, and see you next time in the wild past.